السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. If the brothers can come closer, inshallah, this is sunnah and inshallah very rewarding. And close the gaps here, inshallah. Alhamdulillah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. Surah Hashr, second surah of the 28th parah. Last week we recited ayat 5, 6, 7. We did tafseer of the ayat 5 as it was tafseer of the week before. We started with 6, but it was already quite delayed and there was still a lot of information left. So 6 and 7 we'll do today. There's a lot of detail today, inshallah. But we'll summarize it, inshallah. So we'll recite over again the ayat number 6 and 7. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وما أفاء الله على رسوله منهم فما أوجفتم عليه من خيل ولا ركاب ولكن الله يسلط رسله على من يشاء والله على كل شيء قدير. ما أفاء الله على رسوله من أهل القرى فلله وللرسول ولذي القربى واليتامى والمساكين وابن السبيل كي لا يكون دولة بين الأغنياء منكم وما آتاكم الرسول فخذوه وما نهاكم عنه فانتهوا واتقوا الله إن الله شديد العقاب. صدق الله العظيم. We mentioned that Surah Hashr is also called Surah Banu Nadir. Right? The two tribes of the Jews, Banu Qurayza, that were in Khaybar, and this is Banu Nadir, that were outside of Medina. Banu Qurayza, they were eliminated, if you will say, from Khaybar. They were actually, according to their books, according to their law, because of the treachery that they did, they were, according to their leader, Sa'ad bin Mu'adh also, who was a Sahabi radiallahu anhu, they were exterminated because of their treachery. And then Banu Nadir, they also committed treachery over and over and over again, and they were asked to leave. And in summary, when they were asked to leave, Uh, at first, they thought they should, but then some of the munafiqeen gave them word that we will support you. And so it became a problem afterwards. And then they wouldn't want to leave, and they were forced to go. Even then, they were given the safe route. They were told they can take whatever they can with them. And so they did. Now we come to, after they left, what was left behind? What was left behind is the wealth. And we mentioned that, or let's go to back to the story. Um, in Khaybar, there was fighting, right? And because of the fighting, the wealth that came back to the Muslims, this was called mal ghanima, spoils of war. Whereas here, they didn't fight. They got that wealth. These people, they had to abandon it. They left. So it was without fighting. This was called fight, had a different name. Booty or leftover wealth. The Sahaba obviously didn't understand this because the rules hadn't been clear to them. So when the Sahaba saw that in Khaybar, the wealth that was left behind, there was a certain distribution. The distribution was that it was divided into 5 portions. Out of the 5 portions, 4 would go to the mujahideen, the ones that fought. 4 portions would go to the mujahideen, the ones that fought. 1 portion would be divided into 5 parts. 1 portion would be divided into 5 parts. And this is stipulated in the Quran, by the way, not hadith or fiqh or madhab. This is from the Quran. The Surah Tawbah, the 10th para, the very first ayat. وَعْلَمُوا know, أَنَّ that مَا غَنِمْتُمْ غَنِيمَت, the ghanimat that you get, that type of wealth that you get, the spoils of war, فَأَنَّ لِلَّهِ خُمُسَهُ وَلِلرَّسُولِ, for Allah and His Rasul is 1/5 of the 1/5. You had 5, right? 5/5. So the 4 is for the mujahideen, those who fought. And the 1 of the 5th. 1/5 divided into 5 more. So 1/5 of that 1/5 is what? أَنَّ لِلَّهِ وَأَنَّمَا غَنِمْتُم مِّن شَيْءٍ فَأَنَّ لِلَّهِ خُمُسَهُ وَلِلرَّسُولِ. And then وَلِذِي الْقُرْبَى, your close Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam's close relatives. وَالْيَتَامَى, the orphans. وَالْمَسَاكِينَ, the destitute, the poor. وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ, and the traveler who didn't have anything. In other words, there was a distribution of wealth by Allah that these 5 categories would get 1/5, and the rest of the fighters who fought and participated in the war would get 4/5. So, of course, those who fought in the war, they're happy, they got a lot of spoil. As a matter of fact, it's mentioned in narration, Sahaba say, we were dirt poor, we didn't have anything. And the war has made us rich. So they didn't even look at war as just, what, of course you go fight in the path of Allah for the sake of Allah, but there's a big chance you'll lose your life, isn't it? But at the same time, if you didn't, you also gained as well. You gained profit as well. So the problem was when Banu Nadir happened, they were exiled. Now wealth came again. And so Sahaba thought, we're going to get something. Here Allah Ta'ala said, وَمَا أَفَاءَ اللَّهُ, that which Allah gives, or وَمَا أَفَاءَ اللَّهُ, one second. And that which Allah gave, yes, as spoil, or He restored as property, عَلَى رَسُولِهِ, upon His messenger, minhum, from amongst that, or among them, فَمَا أَوْجَفْتُمْ, Allah says, مَا أَوْجَفْتُمْ, you did not urge on upon this wealth, min khayl, any horse, wala rikab, nor any camels. In other words, you didn't fight for it. Allah is trying to make a point. وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهِ, rather Allah, يُسَلِّطُ رُسُلَهُ, Allah Ta'ala, He gives power to His messenger, He gives the right to His messenger, عَلَى مَنْ يَشَاءُ, to give whom He wills. Wallahu ala kulli shay'in qadir. Allah is able over all things. What Allah is saying here is, over there you fought for it, you deserve that money or that spoils, so 4/5 of it went to you. Here you didn't fight for anything. Here Allah directly gave it to you. And so for this type of wealth, it will not go to you. For this type of wealth, there's a different type of distribution. Because they were like, when Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam started to distribute it, they're like, hold on a second. We were the mujahideen, we're the fighters. How come we're not getting anything, right? So that's when Allah revealed the verse and listen, this is a different type of spoil of war. As a matter of fact, it's not even called spoil of war. Right? That one is called mal ghanima, spoils of war. This is called mal fight. The word fight itself means to return, something that is returned. And ghanima, something that is gotten, or like kind of like free or gotten. You achieve it, you acquire it. But the word fight means it's returned. The concept of this, the ulama of tafsir mentioned, the wealth of the non-Muslims here, it actually goes back to Allah. That's what's called fight. Ultimately, Allah is the full owner. It goes back to the ownership of Allah. And this is why it goes back to the ownership of Allah, and He gives Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam the full authority to distribute it as He wills. But to those 5 categories that we mentioned before. Understand? So this time the mujahideen are not going to get. And that's what the next verse says. مَا أَفَاءَ اللَّهُ عَلَى رَسُولِهِ. That which Allah Ta'ala gave to His messenger, min ahli al-qura, from the different villages, from the different counties, where they got this wealth from, فَلِلَّهِ, it is for Allah, وَلِلرَّسُولِ. They're both going hand in hand together, because when you say it's for Allah, what does Allah need of the wealth? What's He going to do with the wealth? It's an honorary mention. Allah mentions His name as an honorary mention, also to show that ultimately the owner is Allah. Specifically in this, Allah is the owner of all wealth, but specifically here, the ownership is fully Allah's. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam will now distribute it according to how He wills. Obviously, this is also under Allah's command. That's the meaning of it is Allah and His Rasul. وَلِذِي الْقُرْبَى, number 2, the family members, or you can say the kin, next of kin. وَالْيَتَامَى, and the orphans. وَالْمَسَاكِينَ, and the poor or destitute. وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ, and the wayfarers, the travelers, or those who don't have anything while they're traveling. And then it says كَيْ لَا يَكُونَ دُولَةً. So there is no دُولَةً بَيْنَ الْأَغْنِيَاءِ مِنْكُمْ. So the rich, aghniya is rich, so that what happens? It doesn't become dula. Dula means to go round and round. In other words, this wealth doesn't simply become something that the rich, they distribute among themselves. It's a distribution among them only. What this means is that the wealth doesn't just go to the rich and they get richer. It goes to those in need. All right? Because what happens, a lot of the mujahideen, they're actually rich, they have wealth. They have a lot of wealth. They don't really need this. And they really exerted themselves and went out and they actually fought, and there was a loss of life and health and wealth, then it's different. But that didn't happen here. So, having completed till this much, there's some other details that we want to mention that Mufti Shafiz has mentioned. I mentioned there was a difference between the two. There's a few more. I'm just going to say, mal ghanima, I mentioned this already, is through struggle, while fay is through surrender. Another difference, or not difference, the rulings of mal ghanima is discussed in Surah Anfal, if anyone wants to check it up, and the rules of fay is discussed in this surah here. Similarly, ghanima mostly goes to the mujahideen, while fay entirely is in the discussion of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, but he then distributes it within these 5 categories. Okay. Small question. Someone, or this is mentioned in Tafseer, Mufti Shafiq mentions this, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam can't take sadaqah, but he can take fay. How come? It's a very interesting question. Because sadaqah is still the wealth of the believers, it's the wealth of the Muslims. It's the leftover of the Muslims. Get it? But fay is entirely Allah's. The ownership changes completely, goes to Allah completely. So when Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam gets it, it's directly from Allah Ta'ala. It's no more the wealth of someone else. This is the reason why Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam cannot take sadaqah, but he can take fay. A beautiful point mentioned here is Allah Ta'ala, He takes full authority here. And in general also, our Islamic system is very different. And this is what I was mentioning last week from the worldly systems that you had. Right? Our Islamic economy is very different. And just to highlight a few things, not too much. In the world we have, you have either a capitalist system or you have a communist system. Yes? This is what we mentioned last week. And the Islamic system is in between. SubhanAllah, one verse, small portion of a verse, explains the whole system. And it's in Surah Baqarah, you can never forget. وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. Just these three words describes the entire Islamic system. وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ. From that which we give them rizq, we sustain them with, يُنْفِقُونَ. They spend it. You notice the middle ground. We give them. In other words, whose wealth is it? Allah's. Ultimately, it's Allah's. But what do? They spend it. So who has temporary authority? Human beings. So full authority is with Allah Ta'ala, but we have some authority. And then that also, we have to give some of it as a necessity. You see how it works? In capitalism, what do you have? It's all your money. You do whatever you want. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Right? It's your full ownership. It's up to you. You can earn, spend however you want. That's all yours. You can cheat, you can steal, right? It's how you make money. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you make money as long as you make it, right? So in the Islamic system, no, you don't have full authority. Allah has full authority. He gives you temporary authority. He gives you temporary ownership. وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ. Of that which we sustained you with. Rosie, we give you rizq. Why is it temporary, or how is it temporary? On the Day of Judgment, Allah will ask, I gave you wealth, what did you do with it? Now, if it was fully yours, you wouldn't be held accountable. It's your money, do whatever you want. But that's not the case. Allah Ta'ala will say, did you spend it on halal, or did you spend it on haram? Both ways. How did you earn it? Halal means or ways? How did you spend it? Halal means and ways. These are one of the five main questions, isn't it? How did you earn your wealth, and how did you spend your wealth? So there will be hisab. And we all know there are rules. It's our money, but we have rules. We cannot spend on halal haram. We cannot earn certain ways, spend on certain things. We have restrictions, we have rules and laws. So this gives an ishara indication that the wealth, though it is ours temporarily, we will be held fully accountable. In communism, you have what? It's not yours at all. It belongs to the government, belongs to whatever. Or socialism ultimately is what? You have to, everyone is equal, everyone gets an equal share, whatever it may be. It's also unfair, unjust. And the capitalist system is also unjust. So the Islamic system is in between. And Islam is the only system where it mandates that you have to give a portion to the poor. The Christians will say it's a good thing, if you give, it's a good thing, it's virtuous. For us, no, you have to take care of the poor. So it goes back. كَيْ لَا يَكُونَ دُولَةً بَيْنَ الْأَغْنِيَاءِ مِنْكُمْ. So it's not just a redistribution of wealth between the rich among you. It doesn't just become the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. That's the meaning of كَيْ لَا يَكُونَ دُولَةً. So it doesn't just go around. It's not just a distribution. Redistribution of what? بَيْنَ الْأَغْنِيَاءِ. Between the ghani, the rich people among you. And that's the whole understanding of when Allah Ta'ala gives a specific distribution of wealth, whether it's fay, whether it's ghanima, whether it's zakat, whether it's kharaj, whether it's ushr. These are all terms. Kharaj and ushr are also basically tax on land. Tax on land. Whether the land you own yourself or whether it was taken over from the non-Muslims. There's different lands have different taxes. Similarly, when we have zakat is not just on gold and money. Zakat is almost everything, right? Almost, not everything, but if you have business, you have zakat on business, so the assets of your business, or the profit of your business, depending on what kind of business you have. If you have animals, a whole load of animals, a business of animals, you have to pay zakat on that. When we studied the alim course, for years we studied the zakat on animals, and we're just like, man, we're never gonna do this stuff anywhere. Why are we studying this stuff? But the reality is, time will come. When the time comes, and people, we had a whole chapter of slavery. We skipped the whole chapter because there's no slaves. So one of our teachers used to say, well, you never know, it's gonna come back again. You need to study this stuff. When it does, then we'll all be stuck. When they say there's a certain sheikh, he's a qadi, big mufti, he knows and he studied all these things. Anyway, some points. Wealth, Islamic economic system has multiple safety measures. Beautiful. Multiple safety measures is what? Wealth cannot be concentrated or monopolized, right? Because quick avenues of getting wealth has been made haram. Quick avenues of getting wealth has been made haram. For example, interest, betting, gambling. These are what? You put some money, boom, you get rich. All these guys now, all these YouTube ads, here's this much money, you can make this much money. Dal mein kuch kala hai. Something wrong. Whenever you have these avenues where you get rich quickly, something's wrong. Illa mashallah. Similarly, we mentioned this, Islam encourages and obligates giving to the poor. It's not just an option, whether it could be zakat, ushr, sadaqatul fitr also. And the last point, which is related to the surah especially, wealth acquired in war is distributed according to the divine wisdom of Allah. So Allah prioritized different people according to His wisdom. Now, if you really go back and think about it, you can find the wisdom behind it. There's a wisdom behind all of these things. And then we have some notes on capitalism is complete freedom of ownership. You can acquire anything by any means, free to use a person's wealth as he wishes. There's no restrictions in business and how to conduct business, no restriction on spending. And the opposite is communism, which ends up in socialism. You have no private ownership. There's common ownership and equal right to everyone. Wealth can be given only according to need. A person does not own their own wealth to spend. In Islam, Allah is a true owner of everything, but Allah has given temporary ownership of some things to people. No one else is allowed to use other things except with permission. Restrictions on how to acquire and how to conduct business, meaning through halal means. Restrictions on spending, meaning you can't buy haram. And a person has to give some of his wealth to others, meaning zakat once a year. So the Islamic system is very beautiful, very logical, very practical, and it is the only solution for mankind that will work. When we first graduated from madrasa, we were still learning. We were in our young days. In Medina Masjid in Manhattan, I remember they had a real big meeting in the United Nations. And they had invited us to actually go speak. They wanted to know how the zakat system worked. And they actually wanted to know, they said, like, our economy is going down, and any system we're ready to use and try to implement any system to see if it works. I wasn't ready to actually explain to them how the zakat system was. So I didn't go, but I think some imams have went and did explain to them. If people actually understand the system of zakat and how it works, this is the best system you can have. Anyhow, continuing forward. Finishing the ayat. وَمَا آتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ, and that which Rasul gives you, آتَاكُم gives you, الرَّسُولُ, فَخُذُوهُ, take it. وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ, and that which he prevents you, prohibits you from, فَانْتَهُ, stay away from it. وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ, and fear Allah, إِنَّ اللَّهَ شَدِيدُ الْعِقَابِ, verily Allah is severe in punishment. This is one of the main verses in the Quran that show that it is necessary to follow Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. In other words, whatever Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam gives you, Allah said whatever He gives you. So this is referring to His sunnah. He's not just talking about this incident here. But whenever Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam says something, this is also legally binding. It's Sharia. We mentioned this many times. Sharia is a mix of what? Quran and Sunnah. Quran and Sunnah. It's not just Quran. Again, this is for those misinformed individuals who feel that Quran suffices. Quran is enough. This is wrong. It's wrong aqidah. Without hadith, you cannot understand Quran. Without hadith, you cannot implement the Quran. Without hadith, you cannot follow Sharia. This is one of the key verses in the Quran that clearly mention وَمَا آتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ, and whatever Rasul brings to you, gives you, فَخُذُوهُ, take it. وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ, whatever he prevents you, prohibits you from, فَانْتَهُ, refrain from it. Some people say, some of the Quranists like to say, those who say that they follow only Quran, that this verse is relating to the story. We say, no. وَمَا, Allah said, kept it general, anything, anytime. So, this is a clear proof that hadith is also part of Sharia. Another point, hadith is the sayings, the actions, and the approvals of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Are all the hadith sunnah? No. There are incidents where Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam told a certain sahabi, move, come here. Is that sunnah now? No. Sunnah is that which he did, which we were commanded to do as a ibadah, as act of worship. If he said, Ya Zayd, oh Zayd, come here, that's not sunnah. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam stood up and urinated. Is it sunnah? No. So many things that he did were not sunnah. So we have to understand the difference between hadith and sunnah also. Similarly, there's a little gray area. What's the gray area? Some things Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam did as a habit. Some ulama say it's sunnah, but it's not a sunnah that what? It's called sunan zawaid. Extra sunnah. It's not sunan al-huda, a sunnah of hidayat, in the sense that this is not a sunnah that you have to follow. This is a sunnah that he did. It's up to you if you want to follow it, you don't follow it. Those who have extreme love for Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, may Allah give us that too. They say follow it. Don't ask questions, just do it. Example, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam loved kaddu. Kya kehte hain Angrezi mein kaddu? Pumpkin, squash. He loved squash. Is that a sunnah? Is it sunnah in the sense that is it a command of Allah that you have to follow your messenger in this aspect for hidayah, for guidance? No. It's just something that he liked. That's it. So those who are extreme in their love for Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam they said, look, just eat it, with the intention that he loved it, so I also love it. So you can say that, no problem. But can you, now if someone doesn't like it, really doesn't like it, can you force them to eat it? No, you can't. So this is called, there's a difference between sunan al-huda, sunan al-zawaid. Extra sunnah that is pertaining to guidance, meaning commanded by Allah. So now you had that. So not every hadith is sunnah, right? However, every sunnah is from hadith. Any sunnah Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam did is from hadith. But not every hadith is sunnah. Similarly, there are sunnah that are necessary to follow. There are sunnah that are optional. So when you study the entire work of hadith and sunnah, you'll get that. But just to know that this is one of the verses that refer to the sunnah being a proof. If we go further, then will be quite some detail, but we'll stop here for today, inshallah. A little bit short. We'll stop here for today, inshallah. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. جزاكم الله خير.